So I think staying true to the topic of employee engagement, I would like to engage you and perhaps just deepen what Ricky and the team has done. And my assumption really hinges around a number of topics that they've covered. The one is that the leadership team of the organization is serious about employee engagement, that both the culture and the skill are actually intact. And lastly, the point that I would like to make is around how we budget or make finance available to support any of the other initiatives around employee engagement. As introduced, I'm with Standard Bank in the group IT area, and my role there is to head up learning. And as you can imagine, the challenge that we face is no different from any other organization or any other industry. We all are familiar with the VUCA conversation and challenges that we see. At the moment, what we're experiencing is that it's de-VUCA'd. We're talking about disruption, we're talking about deep digitization. And I think the World Economic Forum report was very strongly suggesting that if these challenges, if these problems are not properly harnessed, they can lead to further inequality, further skills gap, and further challenges within organizations. However, if the leadership, and to my point earlier, if the leadership harnesses this, if we address the skill shortage, the skills gap issues, and other challenges that we face as an organization, this remains a wonderful opportunity. We know that there's more jobs that are going to be created. However, if we're not circumspect and very clear about these opportunities, they can miss us about just like any other opportunity. And most importantly, the disruption, the digitization, and many of these other challenges can impact the organization quite negatively. Just staying to the topic of employee engagement, I would like to point out that 32% of our employees are successfully engaged or actively engaged. Now, if you recall, the LMG group spoke about the All Blacks performance. So in your organization, who are the All Blacks? Or do you have the All Blacks team members in your organization? Because for us as Standard Bank, we've got 50,000 employees. Just over 15,000 of those are actively engaged. And you look at another number of over 34,000 people who we say could be disengaged and those that are trying to sink the ship. It's quite a significant number. It's almost 70%. As we know, the other research has also came in showing that between 60 and 70% of our employees are not happy with what they're doing. So we really have to focus our energy on what will make the major impact. And I must say, in my experience, is that we neglect the 32%. All we do, we just give them more work. Or we say, you guys are fine, let me just focus. I mean, the L&D departments focus on what? On development areas. Here's a skill gap, go address it. We never speak about people that are on their own, going out, doing research, learning, spending hours and hours. How do we go back to them and say, how can we make this better for you? And I'll share with you some of the things that we have learned through our organizations as we engage. But I mean, you can look at all those points really are quite scary with regards to where we're going. And I'm sure other speakers this morning spoke about how we live in the era of the unknown, because some of the jobs that will exist tomorrow, we really don't know what those kind of jobs. And actually, from a learning and development perspective, I'm not willing to put learning and development plans beyond 24 months. Because I'm saying, I don't know. I can't tell you what we must train our teams in the next 24 months. Let me be here and live in the presence and make plans for us for what we are currently seeing playing out in the next 24 months. Beyond that, we'll have to navigate when we get there. Some of the things that we are doing, I still am a big fan of surveys. However, most of our employees are quite fatigued. And here I'm talking about localized surveys. I'm not talking about these dragged out surveys that carry on for months. I'm talking about something that in 2 weeks' time, a monkey survey on a particular topic where you can get some insights. Just to give you an example, we ran a survey just with our group IT employees where we're asking them, how would you like to learn, when would you like to learn, and which mediums? Our employees came out and say, I do not have time during the week to learn. However, majority are saying 3 hours in the evening I can spend time. When we shared that with EXCO, they made a decision right there and then to say, once a month, you have a day dedicated in the team for learning. Managers, make it happen. And it was a simple decision to say, we can see we're pushing our people, we're agile, we're driving performance and other things. However, if we do not focus also our energies on learning, here's a day dedicated, 8 hours, go learn. Secondly, understanding and catering for work-life, we used to call it work-life balance. I argue that that has shifted. It's no longer balancing, it's just blending. You know, if I have a sick child at home, can I work at home? And many other things that we are actually seeing that technology and other facilities are there. But as I've mentioned earlier, leadership and how we make decisions really do not allow that to play out. And really, I think if we are serious about employee engagement, it's not just engaging. Engaging is not enough. It's more about how we're creating those experiences. And it could be that, you know, it's really us understanding individually from our employee purpose to what makes them tick, to what challenges they face, so that we can get the best out of them. And what we also found, and I'm glad I spoke after one of our providers of the e-learning platform content, and I'm glad I don't see them here. But what we are actually saying is that e-learning is not enough. As L&D folk, we have to be continuously scanning the horizon and looking where can we source, curate the best content. And actually, what's happening today is that our employees are already, through digital learning platforms, engaging and learning. When we draw some of the best ways people learn, when we ask them, they say, first, I'll go on YouTube. Secondly, I'll Google. Thirdly, I'll speak to a friend. Fourthly, I'll see if Network Next or any of my LMS have got that. I'll speak to my manager, and the list goes on and on. But what about saying if you're using YouTube and you Google and you use all these platforms, why can't we bring those to you? And how do we make learning credits and points portable for you so that whatever you learn, we can trace, we can interact and really understand? Because at the moment, most of our L&D folk don't know what our people are learning. As I've mentioned, our people are saying, in the evening, that's when I have time for learning, and God knows what they are studying. And how can we bring that back into the organization? Because it's not what you learn, it's what are you capable of doing with that learning. And hence we talk about the skill, not just the learning process. And you know, the organizations will be a better place if we can harness those. Some of the points that I would like to make, it's about empowering people, removing obstacles. As I've mentioned, people said, I do not have time to learn at work. And we've removed that barrier and say, here's a dedicated day a month for you to learn. And these are some of the things that we would like to share with you, and hopefully you find some of the points to engage your employees and make it work for you. What will keep us afloat as we engage and we look at data and we look at where the sector or the economy and many other things are going, we're starting to see that it's more about intelligent building, home, collaborative spaces, because really the days of work being a place or an environment where I work at 5 Simmons but I can work at home, I can work in Roodepoort office, I can work in Rosebank, I can work in Sandton. Really, it's how do we make that available and allow people the flexibility to stay connected in any environment that they work in. And it's also about meaningful work, that we really need to look at our work processes and say how meaningful is that. I cannot emphasize the issue around leadership, trusted leadership, where people know that if we're saying we would like you to be engaged, we would like you to interact, we would like you to participate, we would like you to give us feedback around these surveys, that our people trust that the information they give us will be utilized and will engage them to understand it further so that we can make certain decisions. The last point I would like to touch on is around technology and share with you how the opportunity that cloud presents, and in particular Standard Bank, we've mentioned two partners being Microsoft and AWS, and we say these are our cloud partners. We've engaged the Reserve Bank and just so as to clear traffic, but we can remain focused and say we've engaged with our partners. This is the direction we're taking. We're going to the cloud on many processes and systems, but at the same time, we had to address a number of issues. One is the negative publicity that you have seen around the union saying we are impacting jobs. At the same time that we are impacting jobs, we're also creating new jobs. And as I've mentioned, some of the new jobs we don't know. But it's how responsibly we engage on that. And not only did we do it for ourselves, but we came with our competitors, Time Bank, ABSA, we had, the bank in Sandton, the one with the zebra, what do we call them? Investec. We had Investec as well. And we engaged and we said, our decision is really to partner and go into the cloud, but how do we make sure that when we do it responsibly and many other things. And internally, we're setting up partnerships and say, how do we responsibly move and adopt this technology in a sensible and reasonable way. And that's working for us because we are leading in terms of that. Also dealing with some of the threats from cybersecurity perspective. I'm sure most of you know about the debit order scams that have seen, and millions of rands have been lost individually with the 99 rands fictitious debit orders coming through. Again, that was solved for through Standard Bank collaborative approach, partnering with industry, and we managed to deal with it. So really for us, it's about how do we make sure that you engage your employees in solving for pertinent issues that affect the organization, also addressing the type of growth and sustaining the organization in that way. And lastly, just the point is to say, really, our ability to throw ourselves in the deep end and owning that, and as we're going along, together navigating and presencing, as the word I would like to borrow from one of our speakers, is really to make sense of our present, but we cannot do that if we not immerse ourselves, interact, and together craft a way forward. I thank you.
Thank you. The idea of working from home, how do we maneuver around employee accountability and working from home?
Okay, let's go. Yeah. So again, thank you for the question. It's quite a serious one, especially depending on the nature of the job that our employees are engaged with. But I think it's about time, thank you. I think it's about time that we actually look at integrating that, and technology allows that. So firstly. Secondly, the question of responsibility and accountability is another issue. I guess it's more of a fear-based and leadership approach which says, I will not allow you because I'm worried what you will do if you're not under my watch. And that we're saying there are many ways that you can deal with that. Firstly, is to say, are you watching or looking for outcomes, or are you looking for input? if I've got a piece of work I need to deliver, it doesn't really matter where I do it, as long as I can give you that outcome. So it needs to be saying, what are the outcomes we're looking for? And deal the exceptions, because many policies in organizations have been changed because of how one or two individuals have clocked the system or have committed fraud or this, and that policy was removed. Good policies and good initiatives have been dealt that way. So we really cannot deal with painting everybody with the same brush. Any other questions?
Hello, thank you for that presentation, especially on what you do at Standard Bank.
Yes.
I'd like to know from a learning development perspective how
Yes.
you measure success.
Yes. So for me, there are a number of factors that we need to look at. And gone are the days where, as learning and development organizations, we measure ourselves just by the smiley sheets that I attended this program, I enjoyed lunch, it was really good engaging. But we're really saying back in the workplace, that which we try to impact, are we getting the results? At the moment, for me, what's key, as we're moving into the cloud, as we dealing with challenges of cybersecurity, as we're automating, as we're dealing with AI and robotics, is to say, what is the skill that we're trying to build for, and if that skill is working for us. So who's certified? Who's capable of helping the bank move in this direction? So we're looking at number of certifications we have and what actually can our employees do versus what our providers and partners can do. At the moment, we know that when it comes to cloud, most of the capability in South Africa sits overseas or internationally. We're now seeing some of these international players coming and investing. At the moment, we're building for that. One of the success measures for me and my team would be how much of that certification skill sits with the bank rather than external. So we're sitting on a low base, a base of, if you like, when you look at digital skills across the board, we're sitting at about 30% skill base. How do we grow that? And to measure that for me is more appealing than to measure smiley sheet and if people were comfortable with this learning or that learning.